Battle of Iwo Jima. Deep historical background. By early 1945, the Pacific War had entered its terminal phase, but the end, though inevitable, was neither simple nor near. The conflict between the United States and Imperial Japan had evolved from a series of naval engagements and island skirmishes into a grinding, attritional campaign defined by geography, logistics, and doctrine. Japan's imperial expansion across East Asia and the Pacific throughout the 1930s and early 1940s had been driven by structural pressures, limited natural resources, industrial dependency on imports, and a strategic doctrine that emphasized preemptive expansion to secure autonomy. The attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 had been intended to neutralize American naval power long enough for Japan to consolidate a defensive perimeter stretching from Southeast Asia to the Central Pacific. However, that perimeter began collapsing after the pivotal shift in 1942. The Battle of Midway crippled Japan's carrier fleet. Subsequent campaigns in Guadalcanal, the Solomon Islands, and New Guinea forced Japanese forces into a defensive posture. By 1944, American industrial capacity, unmatched globally, had translated into overwhelming naval and air superiority. The United States had adopted a dual-axis strategy. General Douglas MacArthur advanced through the Southwest Pacific toward the Philippines, while Admiral Chester Nimitz executed the Central Pacific island hopping campaign. The logic of island hopping was ruthless and efficient. Rather than assault every Japanese-held position, American forces would seize strategically critical islands, bypass heavily fortified positions, and use captured territory to project air and naval power further west. Each captured island became a logistical node, an airfield, a supply depot, a staging ground. By late 1944, the U.S. had captured the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, bringing mainland Japan within range of long-range B-29 Superfortress bombers. This marked a fundamental shift. Japan itself was now directly vulnerable. Yet one obstacle remained between the Marianas and the Japanese home islands: an 8-square-mile volcanic outcrop in the Pacific known as Iwo Jima. Escalation and buildup of tensions, Iwo Jima was not valuable in terms of resources or population. Its importance was entirely strategic. Located roughly halfway between the Marianas and Tokyo, it served as an early warning station for incoming American bombers. Japanese radar installations on the island allowed Tokyo to prepare defenses hours in advance. Additionally, the island hosted fighter aircraft capable of intercepting B-29 raids. From the American perspective, Iwo Jima presented both a threat and an opportunity. As long as it remained under Japanese control, bombing missions over Japan faced increased risk. But if captured, the island could serve as an emergency landing field for damaged bombers and a base for fighter escorts. The decision to invade Iwo Jima was not uncontested. Some American strategists questioned whether the cost would justify the benefit. Alternative approaches, such as bypassing the island entirely, were considered. However, the Joint Chiefs ultimately concluded that the operational advantages outweighed the risks. Meanwhile, the Japanese High Command had undergone its own transformation in doctrine. Earlier in the war, Japanese forces often relied on banzai charges, mass infantry assaults intended to overwhelm the enemy. These tactics, however, had proven disastrously ineffective against American firepower. By 1945, Japanese defensive strategy had shifted dramatically. The objective was no longer to win battles outright, but to maximize American casualties, prolong the war, and potentially force a negotiated settlement. Iwo Jima would become the ultimate expression of this doctrine. Strategic planning and decision-making. The defense of Iwo Jima was entrusted to Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, a seasoned officer with experience in the United States. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Kuribayashi understood American industrial strength and recognized that Japan could not win through conventional means. He made a critical and controversial decision. There would be no Banzai charges. Instead, the island would be transformed into a fortress designed to inflict maximum attrition. Over several months, Japanese forces constructed an extensive network of underground tunnels, bunkers, and fortified positions. Nearly 11 miles of interconnected tunnels allowed troops to move unseen, resupply, and launch counterattacks. Artillery positions were concealed, protected, and pre-registered to cover every inch of likely landing zones. Mount Suribachi, the island's most prominent feature, was heavily fortified. Beneath its surface, Japanese engineers carved chambers for artillery, machine guns, and command posts. Kuribayashi's strategy was clear: allow the Americans to land unopposed, draw them inland, and then unleash coordinated, devastating fire from concealed positions. On the American side, the invasion, codenamed Operation Detachment, was assigned to the U.S. Marine Corps under the command of Lieutenant General Holland Smith. The assault force included 3 Marine divisions, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Preparations were immense. The invasion fleet consisted of hundreds of ships, including battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and transport vessels. In the weeks leading up to the landing, the U.S. Navy conducted heavy bombardment of the island, attempting to neutralize defenses. However, the bombardment was less effective than anticipated. The Japanese defenses were deeply entrenched and largely immune to surface-level destruction. This miscalculation would have profound consequences. Execution of the battle, February 19, 1945. The landing at 9 a.m., the first wave of Marines approached the beaches of Iwo Jima. The initial landing was eerily quiet. There was no immediate resistance, no gunfire, no visible enemy. This silence was deliberate. The volcanic sand of Iwo Jima proved immediately problematic. Soft and unstable, it made movement difficult. Vehicles became stuck. Troops struggled to advance. The beach quickly became congested with men and equipment. Then, without warning, the island erupted. Japanese artillery and machine guns opened fire from concealed positions. Mortars rained down. The beaches became a killing zone. Within minutes, chaos set in. Units were pinned down. Communication broke down. Casualties mounted rapidly. Unlike previous battles, there were no clear front lines. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere, hidden beneath the ground, firing from invisible positions. The fight for Mount Suribachi. At the southern end of the island, Marines of the 5th Division were tasked with capturing Mount Suribachi. The ascent was brutal. Every inch was contested. Japanese defenders emerged from tunnels, launched ambushes, and disappeared again. After 4 days of intense combat, Marines reached the summit. On February 23, 1945, a small American flag was raised atop the mountain. Later that day, a larger flag replaced it, an event captured in one of the most iconic photographs in history. But the battle was far from over. The Northern Advance, The main body of Japanese defenses lay in the northern part of the island. Here, Kuribayashi's strategy reached its full expression. Every ridge, every rock, every bunker was fortified. Progress was measured in yards, sometimes inches. Marines had to destroy each position individually, often using flamethrowers and explosives. The fighting was relentless. There were no safe areas. Even rear positions were subject to sudden attacks from hidden tunnels. Psychological strain was immense. Sleep was scarce. The constant threat of unseen enemies eroded morale. Japanese soldiers fought with equal determination. Cut off from resupply, they endured extreme conditions. Surrender was rare. Most fought to the death. Kuribayashi maintained strict control, coordinating defenses and counterattacks. His leadership prolonged the battle far beyond American expectations. Immediate consequences. After 36 days of continuous combat, organized resistance ended in late March 1945. The cost was staggering. Approximately 70,000 U.S. Marines participated in the battle. Of these, nearly 7,000 were killed and over 19,000 were wounded. It was one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history. Japanese losses were even more severe. Of the approximately 21,000 defenders, only a few hundred were taken prisoner. The vast majority were killed in action. The island itself was devastated. Its terrain, already harsh, was transformed into a landscape of destruction. Craters, shattered bunkers, and burned-out positions. Yet the strategic objective was achieved. Iwo Jima was secured. Political and military response. The capture of Iwo Jima had immediate operational benefits. American forces quickly established airfields. Damaged B-29 bombers began using the island for emergency landings. Fighter escorts extended the reach and effectiveness of bombing missions over Japan. However, the human cost sparked debate within American leadership. The scale of casualties raised questions about future operations, particularly the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands. If a small island like Iwo Jima required such sacrifice, what would an invasion of Japan itself entail? These considerations would influence subsequent strategic decisions, including the use of atomic weapons. Medium and long-term consequences. In the months following the battle, Iwo Jima became a critical logistical hub. Thousands of American airmen owed their lives to its airfields. More broadly, the battle reinforced a grim reality. Japan would not surrender easily. Subsequent battles, such as Okinawa, confirmed this pattern. Civilian casualties, mass suicides, and fierce resistance underscored the depth of Japanese commitment. For American planners, the prospect of Operation Downfall, the invasion of Japan, became increasingly daunting. Casualty projections reached into the hundreds of thousands. This context is essential for understanding the decision to deploy atomic bombs later in 1945. Strategic analysis of outcomes. From a purely military standpoint, the Battle of Iwo Jima achieved its objectives. It eliminated a key defensive position, improved bombing operations, and provided a forward base. However, the cost-benefit ratio remains debated among historians. Some argue that the strategic value did not justify the casualties. Others contend that the lives saved through improved air operations and shortened war duration offset the losses. What is indisputable is that Iwo Jima demonstrated the effectiveness of Japan's revised defensive doctrine. The use of underground fortifications, decentralized resistance and attritional tactics significantly increased American casualties. It also highlighted the limitations of pre-invasion bombardment against deeply entrenched defenses, a lesson that would influence future military planning. Legacy and historical significance. The Battle of Iwo Jima occupies a central place in the memory of World War II. It represents both the ferocity of the Pacific War and the extremes of human endurance. The image of the flag raising on Mount Suribachi became a symbol of sacrifice, unity, and determination. It was immortalized in monuments, most notably the Marine Corps War Memorial. For the United States, Iwo Jima reinforced the narrative of perseverance and victory through sacrifice. For Japan, it became a symbol of honor and resistance against overwhelming odds. In a broader sense, the battle serves as a case study in modern warfare, illustrating the interplay of strategy, logistics, terrain, and human psychology. It also stands as a stark reminder of the cost of war. The small island of Iwo Jima, once obscure and insignificant, became one of the most contested and blood-soaked pieces of land in history. And in that transformation lies its enduring legacy.